just haven't moved to the city's pay.
All right, we've got 5:30, so I'd like to call to order tonight's regular Board of Education meeting for Wednesday, June 18th, here in the Map Central Administration Building Boardroom. We have a roll call, please, Tammy.
John Smith.
Here.
Brett Waller.
Here.
Nubbs Ashbeck.
Here.
Amber DeRizzo. Here. Jacqueline Grumler. Mike Hornisher.
Here.
Ron Liberty.
Here.
Paul Crew.
Here.
Kevin Blake.
Here. Please join me and stand if you're able, face the flag for the pledge. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Merrill Area Public Schools Board of Education meeting. MAPS respects the role that our elected board members serve and the function of our board meetings. Board members and administrators are committed to working collaboratively to provide our students with the highest levels of achievement. This meeting is a formal event, and professional conduct is the expectation for all in attendance. Thank you.
Thanks, Shannon. Next on our agenda, or right off the bat, we do have public comment to the board. I did not have any sheets turned in this evening, so we will move right to Board of Education recognition. It's pretty bittersweet for us to recognize Wendorf Busing. We've got Dave Wendorf, Sarah Wendorf, and Rachel Ferguson. We'd like to recognize you guys and your entire crew for the 65 years of transporting generations of families in our Merrill Area Public Schools district. So.
I'll just add that I appreciate you guys have been great to work with for all these years, super easy. Helped with several of our transitions on our end with the staff and those kind of things. Transported many of us and many of our kids to athletic events, and we're just and always delivered all the time. We've always super proud of you guys, so thank you for all your time.
Bring you guys up here and do a photo. Thank you for everything.
That's you.
Oh, that's you.
Put that out there.
Yeah.
But thank you.
Thank you very, very much.
Dave, we expect a 5-minute speech from you.
Yeah, oh boy, that's not happening. You want to get a minute one out of me. Thank you guys.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Next on our agenda will be our administrative reports. As you know, board members have the opportunity to ask questions in advance or to ask clarifying questions while we're all gathered as a group. So I'll turn it over to Shannon for administrative reports.
Thank you. Item A on our administrative reports is the food service monthly report. Includes board rights and participation rates for the month of May. Or it's not here this evening, but if you have questions, I can forward those on. Item B is the MAPS Truancy and Attendance Matters Committee, MC. This was discussed at CTP last week. Report is there provided by Amber Luska. Brad Potter had some input in that, as well as actually all the executive data in there. There's a link there that to a slide presentation that was shared at CTP. So if there are any questions, I could speak to those this evening. Item D is the Director of Pupil Services Special Education Report, focusing on the Northern Achievement Center enrollments and breakdown of the student population, as well as McKinney-Vento Homeless Assistance Act information for that district for the last few years. That was presented by Amber Luska at CTP as well. But if there are any questions or comments, I can forward those on to speak to those myself. Item D is the Director of Curriculum Instruction Report. MAPS Spring Assessment Data. Amanda Patterson went through that at CTP as well. We're pleased with some growth in some areas. We've got some areas that we have to address. Our ACT score took a nice 2-point raise this year, which we're very pleased with. So if there's any questions, her slideshow is attached to that as well. And she's here to answer any questions. Item E is the School Forest Final Report for 24-25 presented by Russ Nolan. There's two things attached there. One is the report that shows the participation levels and the different groups that were using that each day. You can see that once again during the school year we had very, very high usage at our school forest. And then the other attachment is a survey that Russ completes. That's UW Stevens Point is kind of the clearinghouse for all things school forest in the state. And so they put out that survey so they can kind of monitor and keep track of what kind of services are offered by school districts, school forests from year to year. And so Russ had attached that as well. Item F is the English Learner EL report presented by or prepared by Ryan Martinovich for the 24-25 school year. Has a breakdown of student enrollment in those programs as well as grade levels, et cetera, et cetera. That's an annual report that's shared with the board, and that was discussed at the CTP as well. But if you have any questions, I can forward those on. Item G is the Director of Finance report with the budget update from Mark Powell. This was discussed at HR Finance a little bit, and goes through his revenue and expenditures for the month of May. Mark is here if you have any questions for him. We're kind of keeping an eye on things happening in Madison. Joint Finance has met. We haven't had a whole lot of encouraging news coming out of there. That might be an understatement. But there's a lot of work to be done on the state budget. So as we shared at HR Finance, we continue to monitor that. Senator Velskowski is coming up to our PAC meeting up at CISA night next week, and so we have a chance to meet with her and share some of our ongoing concerns, particularly in that area of special education funding. And so we're hopeful for some movement there. That ties into item H, which is the fiscal year preliminary information. Mark has a topic summary sheet attached there as well. And as I said, we continue to monitor those activities coming out of Madison before we can really commit to what our budget is. And we're hopeful that that happens sooner than later. It seems to be kind of dragging. Any questions for myself or Mark on that? Item I, Director of Human Resources. Heather Silver is here. She provided a nice report there regarding kind of we wanted to kind of track the effectiveness of our sub-incentive program that we started this year with board approval last year. And you kind of see the differences in the teacher and aide fill rate from one year to the next. Our fill rates in both cases were higher. In the case of aides, it went from 54% to 68%, and the teacher fill rate went from 84% to 87%, and you can see the number of unfilled positions there. It's hard to draw definite conclusions from this information, but it seems that two things we can say for sure. We started a sub-incentive program, which some people took advantage of, and our fill rates and our absence or unfilled positions are better. I think that's about the only conclusion we can make at this time with 1 year's worth of data. In her report, she did share that that fill rate, had the fill rate remained the same, it would have resulted in 230 positions going unfilled. We covered those 230 positions for $4,500, so that's a pretty good value. So, questions on that? I appreciate you doing that, Heather. Item J is the Director of Buildings and Grounds Transportation update. Nick is here this evening talking about his report talks about summer maintenance projects, transportation updates. We continue to meet with Nick and his crew. Continue to meet with Covison as we transition to that bus vendor every week. We meet with Nick and his crew meet with them, and that's progressing nicely. And so we hope to expect to have a smooth transition for busing in the fall. One of the first steps comes up later in the agenda is the transportation handbook, which Nick and I have gone through and have forwarded that up to Covison as well. So we did replace the main breaker, as I shared with the board the other day, and that went smoothly. Took a little bit longer time than we expected, but so if there's any questions for Nick, he is here. Item K is the superintendent's report. In that report, I talked about sale reporting and planning. We just got back from sale this afternoon. We're down doing the next 100-day reporting, and so in July, I will share with the group as an agenda item the results of the previous 100-day plan that was concluded, as well as where we're going for the next 100 days. In addition, we'll be talking about strategic planning, which is also in my report in July. That work has been done. Community group met with Joe Schrader, who led us through a strategic planning process, and we've shared that with the board, and the steps were approved along the way. We have met as a group to talk about the first year goals within that 5-year plan. They're very specific, and there's very good action steps there. So all those things will be presented in July as well. And then I shared earlier how we continue to monitor the state budget and are hopeful that we start getting some positive news out of Madison on that front. Any questions? Yes.
To the state budget and then to facilities plans. So it seems to me if we get bad news, we're a little bit maxed out on expenditure cutting.
Yeah. Yes. Well put.
At least. However, any type of like upgrades, capital improvements, projects, I assume it all comes out of the same fund, but that's not
Well, so capital improvement projects, some of the big ones are Fund 46, which is separate.
Okay.
So, in fact, we are revisiting our Fund 46 priorities right now because there's some information like the chiller at the high school is kind of end of life. We've done some energy efficiency things that we can share, but we will be very limited out of our general budget with what we can do, to answer your question. So Fund 46 is set aside for those kind of things. Yes.
I guess that was the question is are we keeping an eye out for where the next low hanging fruits are? And I just assume that it would be project related because that's a gut feel, because I think your staff is locked in for a year.
Yeah.
That's just not touchable.
Yeah, so in Mark's report that he shared in HR Finance, when we went through this with a pretty fine-tooth comb about a week, 10 days ago, virtually every expense account in this district has been touched and reduced as to grab that. So to your point, we've done about as much as we can there. And so deferred maintenance would be an option, depending on how this all shakes out in Madison. But the Fund 46 stuff is kind of separate, and so we have that priority list, and we'll make some of those decisions. We can't take, I suppose you could get kind of creative as far as like, instead of spending Fund 10 balance, we would spend 40, 46 for this thing, you know, and you could maybe do a little gamesmanship that way. But we do submit and update our Fund 46 report to DPI, so we want to be too aggressive with that. Any other questions on that? Thanks.
Thank you, Shannon. Next, we will go through our committee reports. We'll start with the policy committee. Draft minutes were attached from the May 19th committee meeting. Board members have any questions for our policy committee? Updates from Neola, another meeting coming up. Questions for our policy committee members? Hearing none, we'll move on to our Finance Human Resources Committee. Draft minutes from our June 11th committee meeting were shared. Any questions from board members for our Finance Human Resources Committee? Any questions for Finance Human Resources Committee? Hearing none, we'll move on to CTP, our Curriculum Technology Pupil Services Committee. Met on June 11th, right before Finance HR. Draft minutes are attached. Board members have questions for our CTP committee members. Any questions for our CTP committee members? We will move on then. Unfinished business, we do not have anything categorized in that manner, so we will start the first topic under Board of Education business. We will start, as Shannon led in earlier, with our transportation handbook for our 2025-2026 topic summary sheet from Ikuzawa, reviewed by a number of people. There is a recommended motion. I'm willing to make a motion on this agenda item tonight. Mike?
I recommend, I make a motion to approve the 2025-2026 transportation handbook.
Motion by Mike, do we have a second? Second by Paul. Open the floor for discussion or questions on this motion or topic. Anything you'd like to highlight?
Sure. So we're bringing this to the board a little bit earlier than usual because we want to start the sign off on the transportation handbook for families as part of the bus enrollment process. And so we want to get that cooking a little bit earlier because we're going through this pretty substantial transition from Windorf to Covisan. And so this is a little bit early for us, but in discussions with Covisan, their approach has been that they will adopt to the district's transportation handbook. So we went through and modified it. There are very few material changes to it other than changes to bus vendors and contacts and some dates and those kind of things, but there are no policy changes or any of that type of thing in here. So it's essentially the same one. We're just starting it and getting it approved earlier for the bus vendor.
All right, any additional discussion or questions on this motion or topic? Hearing none, all those in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed, say nay. Any abstentions? Motion carries. Next item on our agenda is our Achievement Gap Reduction or AGR objectives. Attached with a topic summary sheet, co-authored by Amanda Patterson, Heather Carr, and Megan Kautzer. And there's a recommended motion from our CTP committee. Paul?
I move to approve the AGR end of the year report.
Motion by Paul, do we have a second? Second by Ron. Any discussion or questions in regards to this motion or topic? Any highlights that you want to make there?
Mandy,
It's
you
pretty.
want to come up and speak to this or any next topic items?
I can if you.
I think it's pretty self-explanatory.
Yeah.
This one is. This outlines our approaches to AGR, which is this state-defined model. And so the state defines what approaches you can take to classroom reduction or achievement gap reduction is probably the best way to describe that. And if you click on the links, it shows what we do in each of those. And so we kind of do a combo model, class sizes and or instructional approaches and some techniques.
Do you have any additional questions or discussion on that motion or this agenda item? Otherwise, we'll bring that to a vote. All those in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed, say nay. Any abstentions? Next item on our agenda is the Next Path Education Data System. Attached was a topic summary sheet co-authored by Amanda Patterson and Amber Luska. Recommended motions coming from our Finance, HR, and CTP committees. Anyone willing to make a motion on this agenda item? Ron?
Motion to approve the purchase order for Next Path as a student data system starting with the 2025-26 school year using CNI funds.
Motion by Ron, we have a second by Nubbs. Any discussion or questions in regards to that motion or this agenda item? Any discussion or questions? Hearing none, all those in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed, say nay. Any abstentions? Motion carries. Next item on our agenda is the iReady Assessment Instruction and Practice Tool. Topic summary sheet co-authored by Amanda Patterson and Amber Luska, and a recommended motion coming from both our Finance, HR, and CTP committees. Anyone willing to make a motion on this agenda item? Paul?
I move approval of the purchase of iReady as a universal screening, instructional, and practice tool starting the 2025-2026 school year, utilizing CNI funds and Title II funds.
Motion by Paul. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Ron. Any discussion or questions in regards to this motion or agenda item? Any discussion or questions in regards to this motion or agenda item? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed, say nay. Any abstentions? Motion carries. Next item on our agenda is Edmentum, topic summary sheet from Brad Potter. Recommended motion from Finance, HR, and CTP committees. Anyone willing to make a motion on this agenda item? Nubs?
I recommend approval of the Edmonton online learning platform for $15,070.
Motion by Nubs. We have a second by Mike. Any discussion or questions in regards to that motion or this agenda item?
I think it's worth noting that items, the next path, the iReady and the Edmentum, were researched by different people, including Amanda and Brad and others, and are all better products at a better price, is how we feel. So I think this is a wise use of our resources, and I think we'll get better results out of it.
Sounds good, thank you. Any additional discussion or questions in regards to this motion or agenda item? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed, say nay. Any abstentions? Motion carries. Next item on our agenda is approval of 2025-2026 property casualty and liability insurance coverage. Attached was a topic summary sheet from Mark Powell. A recommended motion from our Finance Human Resources Committee. Anyone willing to make a motion on this agenda item? Mike?
Motion to approve the 2025-2026 liability and work comp insurance as presented.
Motion by Mike, do we have a second? Second by Paul. Any discussion or questions in regards to that motion or this agenda item? Any discussion or questions in regards to that motion or agenda item? Hearing none, all those in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed, say nay. Any abstentions? Motion carries. Next item on our agenda is the annual review of contracts for services over $10,000 for fiscal year 26. That topic summary sheet was put together by Mark Paul, and a recommended motion coming from our Finance Human Resources Committee. Anyone willing to make a motion on this agenda item? Paul?
I move approval of the continuation of the contracts with vendors and purchasers as presented with 2025-2026 fiscal year with cost variances not to exceed the lower of 5% or $10,000.
Motion by Paul. Do we have a second? Second by Mike. Do we have any discussion or questions in regards to this motion or agenda item? Any discussion or questions in regards to the motion or agenda item? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Anyone opposed, say nay. Do you have any abstentions? Motion carries. Next item on our agenda is coaches, mentors, advisors compensation increase. Topic summary sheet was provided by Heather Soberg. Recommended motion from our Finance Human Resources Committee. Anyone willing to make a motion on this agenda item? Ron?
Motion to approve the increase in the coaches, mentors, and advisors paid by 3% and adjust the BVA pre-approved teacher duties as presented.
Motion by Ron. Do we have a second? Second by Mike. Any discussion or questions in regards to that motion or this agenda item? Any discussion or questions in regards to that motion or agenda item? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Anyone opposed, say nay. Any abstentions? Motion carries. Next, we will have consent agenda. Before I ask someone for that motion, and would anyone like to have anything pulled from the consent agenda to be handled individually? Anyone want anything pulled from the consent agenda to be handled individually? Hearing none. Anyone willing to make a motion on consent agenda? Ron?
Motion to approve consent agenda items A through E, which includes the approval and second reading of policy 0164 meetings, policy 0174.1 annual report, policy 2340 district sponsored trips, policy 3120.08 employment of personnel for co-curricular extracurricular activities, policy 5200 attendance, policy 5330 administration of medical/emergency care, policy 5460 graduation requirements, policy 5505 academic honesty, policy 5610 suspension, pre-expulsion and expulsion, policy 5771 search and seizure, policy 7540.05 assertive technology and services, policy 7544 use of social media, policy 8500 food services, policy 8510 wellness, policy 8531 free and reduced price meals, policy 8600 transportation, policy 8660 transportation by private vehicle for district sponsored activities or trips, policy 8680 transportation service contracts, and policy 5411 third grade promotion and retention at risk students, and the deletion of policy 8640 transportation for field and other district sponsored trips. Minutes of the May 14, 2025 meetings, claims, vouchers, and receipts totaling $3,203,502.92, donations totaling $250, and the attached personnel report contingent upon release of contract for hiring and upon satisfaction of appropriated liquidated damages for resignations and furloughs.
Motion by Ron. Do we have a second? Second by Nubbs. All those in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed, say nay. I'll ask for abstentions, but I don't believe we have any. All right, motion carries. Next, we will have items for future meetings. As always, you can get in touch with Shannon or myself. This is a time that if you have something that's fresh on your mind, you want to be an agenda item either at a committee level or brought to the board's attention. Now it's time to mention that. We do have a couple things that are being worked on over the summer, so we'll get some updates as the summer goes on. Perhaps even be a good time to have some people thinking about, board members thinking about our board admin retreat topics for August. So there are some things that we've been talking about. Had some ideas come in on email already, so we'll add those to the list and go through that. But if you're thinking of something in the next month or so, add that so there's some time for us to prepare that meeting. I guess I'll ask you if anyone has anything they're thinking of this evening they would like to share for a future agenda.
Do we want to add that with the school long-term plan to that list, just as a place marker?
Yeah, we could do that.
Anything else anyone like to mention either for the next board meeting or for that board admin retreat? All right. Just keep those on your mind, and we'll keep working going forward to getting those put together. Reminder that tomorrow Shannon and I will speak at the on the radio, 8:15 a.m. on Blue Jay 730 radio station, just highlighting things going on in the district in tonight's meeting. Reminder of future meetings. Policy Committee meets on Monday, June 23rd, 5:30 p.m. here in the boardroom.
Kelly?
Yeah.
We did, move that one to 4:30 and I forgot to reflect that.
All right. So So if you show up at 5:30, you'll be an hour late. So 4:30 PM on June 23rd, here in the boardroom for Policy Committee. On July 9th, our CTP, or Curriculum Technology Pupil Services, meets at 4:30 PM here in the boardroom. Finance HR is immediately following, but no sooner than 5 PM on that Wednesday, July 9th, here in the boardroom. Our next regular scheduled board meeting will be Wednesday, July 16th, 5:30 PM in the boardroom. Next, we have a contemplated motion to adjourn into executive closed session pursuant to Wisconsin statutes under section 19.8511 for NC, considering employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation data of any public employee over which the governmental body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility. F, considering financial, medical, social, or personal histories or disciplinary data of specific persons, preliminary consideration of specific personnel problems, or the investigation of charges against specific persons, except where B applies, which, if discussed in public, would be likely to have a substantial adverse effect upon the reputation of any person referred to in such histories or data or involved in such problems or investigations, and 118.125, discuss other matters involving student records and personal histories that, if discussed in public, will likely have a substantial adverse effect on the reputations of the persons discussed. Purpose of the closed session would be to review administrative compensation and placement for 25-26 and to review the pre-expulsion history chart. Anyone willing to make that motion? Paul?
So moved.
We have a second. Amber? Could we have a roll call vote on that, please, Tammy?
John Smith,
Aye.
Brett Waller.
Aye.
Nels Ashbeck.
Aye.
Amber DeRisso. Mike Hornisher.
Aye.
Ron Liberty.
Aye.
Paul Crew.
Aye.
Kevin Blake.
Aye. Right, we will secure the room, take a couple minute break, and then we will start